Lincoln Riley should just be given the Pac-12 and National Coach of the Year awards. Why not?
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I am your host, Marc, and thanks for making Locked On USC your first listen every day. Whether you are watching on YouTube or wherever you download your podcast, whoops, sorry about that, we are free. And I want to thank you so much for coming along for the ride. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. If you already have, thanks again. It means a lot. And as always, you can follow me on my Twitter at Marc Culkin, MarcKulkin. Okay, it's the end of the week, end of the bye week. Not a whole lot to talk about with USC. They're not playing on Saturday. Get to kick back. Never have to leave the couch. Watch a little football. Make some evaluations on how things are going. So, for instance, let's just have some fun. Talk about some things that involve USC, but aren't real pressing matters. Look. Like I said, end of the week, USC, we're done lamenting their 43-42 loss at Utah. Took some help, but again, we're over it, right? If you haven't heard by now, Lincoln Riley, his name appeared on the Paul Bear Bryant Coach of the Year Award. So I guess they put out their final 25 names. On that list include Jim Harbaugh, Ryan Day, Brett Bielema at Illinois. He's definitely a candidate for National Coach of the Year. He's definitely in the running for Big Ten, Big Conference, whatever they're calling themselves, Coach of the Year. I think Ryan Day, Jim Harbaugh, they returned really good teams. For me, I look at this as this award. Maybe I'm a little biased this year because the way Lincoln Riley is a part of it. When you take over a program and you turn it around immediately, that really shows what your coaching chops are all about. Now you still have to maintain that, so we'll see what Brett can do. And we know what he's done at Wisconsin. We saw what he tried to do at Arkansas, and now he's back home. Well, I don't know about home, but he's back in the Midwest with Illinois, back in the Big Ten, I guess is the best way to put it. Look, let's be honest here. Lincoln Riley, he's got USC ranked number 12. They're already bowl eligible. This team, remember, last year, this team, what's left of last year's team, won 4 games. They're 6-1 now. And he's still building that resume for this season. So, should we just kind of consider giving Lincoln Riley the Pac-12 Coach of the Year award? As long as this team doesn't collapse down the stretch, and when you look at their schedule, unless there's like some really bad injuries at key positions, we're hoping that doesn't happen, knock on wood. We don't foresee that happening. So, if we're talking strictly about Pac-12 Coach of the Year, Chip Kelly made the Paul Bear Bryant national list. But you know what? He's playing with a 5th-year quarterback in DTR. Now, if he goes up to Eugene this weekend and wins, okay, well, I'll throw him a bone, show him a little bit of consideration, as hard as that will be. Whenever I have to give UCLA any type of credit, I get this bile. It just kind of comes up. So, what about Dan Lanning up there at Oregon? He had a really embarrassing loss to open the season at his former employer. And then he's got Bo Nix playing quarterback for him. We know that storm is still coming. Could happen this Saturday. You never know. But again, he walked into a pretty good situation compared to what Lincoln Riley walked into. Supposed to have, the top defense in the conference, right? Well, they're more of an offensive team this year, ironically. So I didn't realize Dan Lanning was an offensive coach. Thought he was a defensive-minded guy. We'll see what happens. His name is definitely in there for Pac-12 Coach of the Year, but I would have him below Lincoln Riley, all things considered. And then Kyle Whittingham, his name made the list as well, but he already has 2 losses on the schedule, regardless of the Utes' narrow victory at home over USC this past weekend, 43-42, with a little bit of help, but we are over that. So those are the guys you're looking, who I guess Lincoln is up against in the Pac-12. Nationally, who's he really up against? I guess his main competition is going to be Josh Heupel at Tennessee. He definitely deserves some credit. Tennessee finally got that monkey off their back. They beat Alabama. They beat them in Knoxville. It's been a while. Kudos. What about Mike Gundy? He's definitely a grown man now over there in Stillwater, Oklahoma State, having a tremendous season. Here's where I'm coming from. And again, very biased. USC podcast for USC fans, Locked on USC, coming at you 5 days a week, even when I've got a really bad back. So if this podcast runs a little short, you'll know why. I rubbed some dirt on it, just trying to get through it. Here's what you need to know about, again, what Lincoln Riley walked into. It was a dumpster fire. You hate to say it like that, but I'm just going to be real about it. What he took over wasn't good. And the turnaround, how it's happened, to go 6-0 the first half of the season, to go into Utah and compete the way they did against a team that was, picked to challenge for the Pac-12 championship at the beginning of the season. Have all the things that go against them the way they did in that game, not play as well as they could have, especially on defense. They tackled like poo-poo, trying to keep this kid friendly. Alex French, after Wednesday's practice, talked about how kind of just echoed what Lincoln Riley said after the game and what we talked about throughout the week. USC had one task on defense. Dalton Kincaid at tight end and Cameron Rising, quarterback for Utah. Cam Rising had a career day. Dalton Kincaid turned himself into probably a first-round draft pick because USC could not tackle the point of impact. They kept letting 3-yard, 5-yard plays turn into 15, 18, 20-yard reception plays because of the yards after the catch. So, assuming USC's defense can get back on schedule, and you just consider everything that USC has accomplished to date, if Lincoln Riley can get this team to the Rose Bowl at worst, or into the playoffs, I think you got to give it to him. Period. Right? The not just the Pac-12 Coach of the Year award, but the National Coach of the Year award. Again, I don't think, about all the coaches who have made that list, I don't think anybody's had a more difficult challenge. Rebuilding the roster. Not really a new quarterback, but he did have to convince Caleb to transfer over. He's wearing a new uniform, playing with a lot of new players. There's some familiarity there with Lincoln Riley and the coaching staff that came over, as well as Mario Williams. But new offensive line coach, coordinator, even though Lincoln Riley is still the play caller. But all those things in play. You got the defense playing. Lincoln Riley has the defense playing above its pay grade. I mean, think about this. Through 7 games, USC has turned the ball over 1 time. They lead the nation with a plus 15 in turnover margin. Can you imagine when this team and the offense starts playing for 4 quarters? Because right now they haven't. They looked fairly good at Utah. That was maybe their most complete game, even though the run game they didn't use it enough, and the defense kind of fell back a little bit. There you go. If Lincoln Riley keeps his team on the trajectory they're on, conference championship game, Rose Bowl or bust minimum, and there's playoffs are still there for him, without a doubt. He is your Pac-12 and National Coach of the Year. I don't care what happens anywhere else, and that includes at Tennessee. That includes Brett Bielema getting Illinois into the conference championship game. We can have that conversation if that happens. I don't see it, but again, I'm looking at it through my Cardinal gold glasses that are reflecting off of this. I'm working on it, guys. I've heard your complaints. Trust me. But until that happens, USC is the underdog. Maybe Lincoln Riley is the underdog. You should probably head on over to Underdog Fantasy because this episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. They're the easiest place to spice up your college football season. And I want to emphasize, it is really easy and really easy to get started. So while you're watching your favorite football team play, head on over there. This is what you want to do. You're going to kind of identify your favorite players. It doesn't even have to be the favorite player on your team. And you can go over there and say, for instance, Oregon's playing UCLA. You can pick them. It's kind of a pick 'em type of thing. Will DTR have more yards passing than Bo Nix? Who will have more turnovers? That type of stuff. Will DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, have more touchdown passes or interceptions in the first half this weekend against Oregon on the road in Eugene? That's what Underdog Fantasy is all about. It kind of just lets you have some fun while you're watching your teams play. It's easy to play. It's available in over 30 states. Just pick between 2 and 5 players across any team, not just your team, and decide if they will finish higher or lower. One of the easiest fantasy to play games out there, and you can win cold, hard cash in a single game. So this is what you want to do. You're going to sign up with promo code LOCKEDON. That's one word. And Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. Deposit $100, get $100 free. So go to UnderdogFantasy.com or find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store or the Google Play Store. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code LOCKED ON, one word. Get in on the college football action today. Okay. So, who are you rooting for Saturday? USC doesn't play. You know that, Trojan fans. And you should know by now that with no more divisional format, the Pac-12 is just going to pick the 2 best teams based on winning percentage to play in the conference championship game. Okay. UCLA has beaten Utah. Utah has 1 loss. Utah beat USC. USC has 1 loss. UCLA and Oregon are still undefeated in the Pac-12. They face off against each other this weekend up in Eugene. Who are you rooting for? If you don't know by now, and I've said it enough, I cannot stand UCLA. You hate to use the term hate, but it's right there on the tip of your tongue. And I loathe Oregon. I just loathe their fans. Said it on the crossover show with JT Wistersel. I've said it before on the Pac-12, Locked On Pac-12 show with Spencer McLaughlin. I believe the Oregon Duck fan base are the most unsophisticated fans in the conference. If you're listening, let me know how you feel about it. I don't care. You guys are the epitome of you think you were born on third base. You haven't. You haven't won anything. Anyhow, like I said, I have a hard time rooting for either one of those teams. And, I've got to make a choice. You've got to make a choice, Trojan fans. Who are you rooting for? If UCLA wins, all of a sudden, I think you got no choice. And you kind of you have to take them seriously this year. They're going to still be undefeated if they win up in Oregon. So heaven help us, Bob Toledo. Could UCLA be heading back to the national championship? We know what happens when when the game gets too big for UCLA. That's why I brought up Toledo. Anyway, we'll see how they handle Eugene this weekend. If they lose, I get to smile. So do you. Hopefully. There's no closet UCLA Bruin fans that call themselves USC Trojan fans. I've never understood that. I root for USC football, but I also root for UCLA in basketball. Yeah, whatever. We already know that, like I mentioned, we talked about the USC and Utah losses. Well, Utah, they still have to travel to Washington State and Oregon. Utah has a bye this week with USC, so they have a really tough back end of the schedule. Oregon, they play at Cal. So not a place that they do well. Justin Wilcox. It's going to be an interesting game. Just circle that on your calendar later this year. And Oregon goes and plays at the Fighting Jonathan Smith, the Oregon State Beavers, with that loud sound system and half a stadium. And let's see. Oh, and they also host UW, their rival. So we can't call the Oregon State game the Civil War anymore, right? Well, I do. I'm going to go with Oregon State knocking off Oregon in that game. And USC, after the bye week, they head to Arizona, and then they'll host Cal and Colorado before they have to go to that. They play the game in Pasadena against that other team across town. So, again, a lot of football left. Who are you rooting for this weekend? Because it's going to play a role in the conference championship game. Also, because USC doesn't get to, they're not playing this weekend, you don't have to leave the couch. You get to watch a bunch of football. The rest of the conference slate isn't that great. Here are the games. You got ASU at Stanford. Who do you pick in this game? ASU's looking better under interim coach Sean Nguano, but Stanford just won at Notre Dame. Now, look, we know Notre Dame isn't good this year, but Stanford's not good either. So I don't know who to pick in that game. I'm gonna say Stanford's gonna go 2 in a row. We'll see if they can put it together. You got Colorado at Oregon State. I think that's a no-brainer. Although, yeah, Oregon State also just beat Washington State. I had a note here. I was trying to follow where I went with that. I'm sorry. My back is really killing me. I apologize. And then UW is at Cal, who you would think, that should be a no-brainer. Cal wins is at home. Washington was exposed playing on the road this year. Then you remember that Cal just lost at Colorado. So who knows what's going on in that game. Here's where we're going. USC is already bowl eligible. They're up to 6-1. Last year they won 4 games. Bowl eligible is like great. If they finish the season with 6 wins, you and I are going to get real intimate through this podcast, and you're going to see what I'm like when I'm angry. You haven't seen that yet. You don't want to see me angry. Trust me. Yes, I am in the press. Yes, I'm a part of the media. I'm also a fan. And when I'm doing this podcast, I try and remain objective, but I'm also going to come at it from a fan's perspective because I think that's what you want to hear. I hope. Let me know what you want to hear. Tell me what you want to hear. So again, because they're bowl eligible, we know that USC could be playing in Vegas at the end of the year, but the odds have increased because of how well they're playing. There's 2 chances to play in Vegas. Hopefully, not just for a bowl game, they'll be playing in Vegas for the conference championship game. At worst, I think where USC wants to end up at the end of the year as far as a bowl game is going to be in the Rose Bowl. But again, if you're the Pac-12 champion and you got 1 loss, and you're the highest ranked, maybe, right now you're number 12. Do you make it into the playoffs? Who knows? Here's what's nice about it. Let's say they don't make to the Rose Bowl. Let's say they don't. Obviously, they're not going to make the playoff. What would you think about playing an SEC team in Vegas? Not bad, right? Just a reminder, USC opens the 2024 season in Las Vegas against LSU, same year that they joined the Big Ten. And we're also starting to hear that's when the college football playoff is going to start. They're trying to move it up quickly. That's why expansion was moving as quickly as it was. So, yeah, this weekend it'll start telling us a little bit about a lot of what's going to happen down the road. I guess we want Oregon to win, don't we? I can't root for UCLA ever. I don't mind Oregon remaining undefeated. I think Utah can beat them. So that will give Oregon a loss. USC can beat UCLA. I want to keep UCLA as highly ranked as possible. And you know what? What would be better than thinking UCLA fan thinking they're going to the Rose Bowl and they're going to the conference championship and maybe the playoffs only to have USC derail that. I'm not saying 13-9, but that would be kind of cool, huh? Wouldn't that, I don't know, 13-9? I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think it's actually going to be a shootout. We'll see. A lot of football between now and then. All right, so we're going to before we get out of here this weekend, again, end of the bye week, over there on wearesc.com, by the way, we still got that subscription special. You might want to check it out. $10 gets you a year subscription. It's a hell of a deal. Go check it out. But I saw a really cool question from one of our subscribers, and they asked, if you could choose one player from USC's storied past to add to this year's team, who would you add? Okay, so on offense, there's really not a whole lot you need to go there. You don't need to replace the quarterback. I think everyone is ecstatic with the run game, with what Travis Dye has brought. Austin Jones, that's your run game so far. You haven't really seen Darwin Barlow. Rayleigh Brown is still a freshman. He's shown flashes. It's coming. It's coming. He's going to bust a big play here soon. But again, you don't really need anything in the run game. I think wide receiver is just fine, even with an injured Jordan Addison. Deep group. I wouldn't, if I'm looking to bring one player, I'm not going to waste it on the wide receiver room, I guess is what I'm saying. Same thing, tight end. Look, if I'm bringing one player into the offense, I'm looking at offensive tackle. So Tyron Smith, or Tony Baselli, Anthony Munoz, pick anybody from the 70s, and I'm just fine if you want to pick one player and you want to throw it on the offensive side of the ball. I think the overwhelming majority of people, they responded on the defensive side of the ball, of course, right? Because, again, you're not replacing your quarterback or running game, wide receivers, and you have a really small pool of people you want to go for on the offensive line, and I don't think it's going to make that big of an impact. But on the defensive side of the ball, it would. So the names kept coming up, of course. The obvious: Junior Seau, Willie McGinnis, Chris Claiborne, Troy Polamalu, Ray Mayaluga. Do we need a big nose tackle? How about a Seth Ellis, Fat Pat, Mike Patterson? The number one name that came up, it seemed like at least, was the big cat, Leonard Williams. Real popular choice. Makes a lot of sense. You could play him on the outside. You could play him in the middle. I mean, what USC just really, really lacks right now is that consistent quarterback pressure. I mean, and you think, well, how can you say that, Mark? They lead the country with 29 sacks. It could be better. And Alex Grinch was talking about that after practice on Wednesday. Yeah, and maybe it's because everybody has last Saturday's game still at the front of their brain, how they didn't come away with any sacks, but they're just one premier player away from bookending a Tuli Tuiapolotu with a big cat Leonard Williams. I mean, think about that. That's scary. Junior Seau on the other side. Or how about this? Why don't we just go here? This is my suggestion. Let's bring Clay Matthews. Put him at rush end. Done deal. I think everyone's set. Because if USC can get that linebacker rush in position nailed down, I think the aggressive, high risk approach that Alex Grinch likes to employ, they're going to be just fine. Stay away from the injuries. Obviously, that's always going to be the caveat here. But if USC can stay relatively healthy, give me a Leonard Williams, I'm on board. Give me a Ray, I'm on board. Give me a Clay Matthews. Who do you think? What do you think? Tell me who you would bring back, one player to add to the roster for the rest of the season to put them over the top. Let me know, because I'll be back next week with Locked On USC, 5 days a week, and we get to look forward to a game at the end of next week. USC at Arizona. Hey, who does Arizona playing again this week? Oh, we went over that, right? Oh, they're on a bye. Go figure. So there you go. Two teams will be rested. I got USC winning big next week. We'll talk about it next week, though. So until then, me, my bad back, we're out of here. Hope you enjoy your weekend. Until then, you know what to do.